Welcome once again to the random RPGs ranked from worst to best on this tier list chosen by the fans. What we're going to do today, once again, is rank them from worst to best. And fans will get to share their opinion about that. So, let's mention today's contenders. We got Beyond the Beyond on the PS1, Dragonstar Varnir on PS4, Switch, and Steam, Final Fantasy Tactics, original PS1 version, Final Fantasy 13, which is on PS3 and Xbox 360, only the first in the trilogy though, Lunar of the Silver Star Harmony, this is a remake exclusive to the PSP, Persona 3 FES on the PlayStation 2, Project Cross Zone, the first one on the Nintendo 3DS, Suikoden 2, available only on PS1, digital on PS3 too, Tales of Exilia, currently an exclusive on the PlayStation 3, but there are rumors about some remasters out there, we'll see what happens. And finally, a Japanese exclusive called Treasure of the Rudras on the Super Famicom, but there's an English fan translation out there, strongly recommended. Wow, so... well guys, I think everybody's going to agree that we already automatically, immediately have a loser, and that is of course Beyond the Beyond. If you wanna defend it for whatever strange reason you may have in the chat, do so or in the comments. But yeah, this is by far, because they're all good games, look at them, they're all great games. Well, with a couple of exceptions, but Beyond the Beyond is by far the worst, right? No contest, no one's gonna stand up for it, no one's gonna stand up. Beyond the Beyond is above Tactics. Someone had to troll. Yeah. Anyway, so that's number 10, that's the worst. Now, for my number 9, I am seriously debating between Final Fantasy 13. I know it's a great game for a lot of you, I don't like it one bit. And maybe Dragonstar Varnir, because while it's still a good game and one of the better compiled hard RPGs, it's not that great, and halfway through the game it gets very repetitive and kind of boring, but I will prefer to play Dragonstar Varnir a million times over Final Fantasy 13. That's just my opinion though. No need to explain to you Final Fantasy 13 or why I don't like it, I've talked about that a million times before. But Dragonstar Varnir is a turn-based RPG where you control this guy in a little harem with some gothic elements, a lot of fan service. The battle system is amazing, very unique and creative. You got these layers, these big monsters or these big enemies that can change layers from like up, down, in the middle, and so can your characters, a party of up to 3, and you can do special attacks. And those special attacks, you know, when the girls execute those special attacks and they can change outfits or pretty much remove clothes. Yeah, it's a bit of a kinky game. It's a compiled hard RPG, but it's good. It's one of the better compiled hard RPGs. So it's a fun game. And honestly, I will rank it higher than Final Fantasy 13, but what do you guys think? Everybody's voting Final Fantasy 13 should be 9. Lots of haters. Final Fantasy 13 is the worst. 13 haters are always just incels. We're all incels for hating the game you like. Final Fantasy 13, 9th place. Wow. Damn. You know what? Yeah, I think Final Fantasy 13 goes in the 9th place. Sorry for all the lovers out there. It's been voted by yours truly and the fans. So I guess that makes it Dragonstar Varnir the 8th place, right? I mean, yeah. I mean, barely anyone is gonna stand up for that. No one played it. So now we got nothing but great games. I myself, you know me, I'm not really a fan of Final Fantasy Tactics, but I admit it's a very influential game. It wouldn't exist without Tactics Ogre, of course, but it's still a very influential game. It's considered one of the best tactical RPGs of all time. A lot of fans out there. PSP version is bonkers. That will be my preferred version of this game to play, actually. But then there's Treasure of the Rudras, which is a very special game. But no one's gonna vote for it because no one played it, except maybe just a very few of us. It's a great game, but it's also a bit of a saga game, has some saga influence, and I'm not the biggest fan of those. I never beat Treasure of the Rudras, even though I played it so many years ago. I will one day, but I don't think my opinion will change drastically about the game, as opposed to some of the others are on the list. I mean, they're some of my favorites of all time in this video, right now, in this list. So, I'm just gonna put Treasure of the Rudras on number 7. You know, it's a great game. It's far better than Dragon Star Varnir and Final Fantasy 13, and definitely far better than Beyond the Beyond. But it just isn't better than every other game in this list, right? So, Treasure of the Rudras, number 7. But now I have a problem. You're gonna have to interfere with that. I know there's a lot of die-hard fans of Final Fantasy Tactics, but just doesn't make sense for me, personally, to rank it above games like Suikoden 2 or Persona 3. I mean, come on, really? But everybody's saying it should be top 5 at least, so... The Lunar PSP edition is fantastic, man. It's one of the best versions of it to play. But I'll give you this. Lunar versus all the others, it just doesn't stand a chance, so... I think Lunar is gonna be number 6. No one's gonna argue that. Plus, there's a lot of people who don't like this version. So, we're ranking the PSP remake, which is my favorite version of it to play. Great remake, great visuals, but more people are more nostalgic towards the Sega CD or PS1 version, right? So, yeah, as much as I love it, it can't compete with the others, right? So, these 4 are some of my all-time favorite JRPGs, man. So, I can't rank Final Fantasy Tactics higher, you know? This is, I mean... I'm sorry, people. This is gonna be number 5. Final Fantasy Tactics, influential masterpiece to a lot of people, but to me, it's merely that, an influential and very historically important and relevant JRPG. But I mean, I like these 4 games way more than Final Fantasy Tactics, so that's a 5. I love Project Cross Zone passionately, and I think a lot of you are great fans and big fans of that game. It's a fantastic crossover that I covered a million times in this channel. Recommended the game to death. I know it's not for everybody because it's a grid-based tactical RPG, but it's fan service. Great fan service in all sense of the word, not just in the sexiness. Also, in terms of, you got a crap ton of characters from many different franchises that some of you grew up with, I grew up with, and we're still fans of those franchises, right? Can we all agree it can't compete with the other 3 games? I mean, it's a fantastic, great game, and I love it, but I don't think anybody's got a problem with this game being on number 4. Except Final Fantasy Tactics fans. Okay, the big 3. Persona 3, Suikoden 2, and Tales of Exilia. Well, you know me, I'm a die-hard of Persona 3 and Suikoden 2. Tales of Exilia, I'm also a die-hard, but I'm a bigger die-hard fan of P3 and Suiko 2. So, Tales of Exilia should be number 3. How do you guys feel about that, huh? But Tales of Exilia is a masterpiece, but it's a short game. And it should have been longer. I just made a video about that. Excellent action RPG, great, one of the better stories in the Tales series. It didn't need to be that long to express its superiority over other Tales games, but that's just the fanboy in me talking about it. I love the dual protagonist feature, I love Mila. Yeah, her outfit is kind of like questionable, but I don't give a shit. I love how she looks, I love how she fights and the development she gets, so... It's a tough one. It's a tough one, guys. People are voting Exilia on the 3rd place. Some haters of Persona 3 here in the chat. Okay, it is decided. Tales of Exilia, number 3. Though it could have been a great number 2 as well. And that means Persona 3 is number 2, because, you know, Suikoden to me, most games always have a preference. Though it could be number 1. Persona 3 will be a great number 1 as well. I know that, and I know a lot of you want this on the 2nd place. But there's also a lot of haters of the game. And no one hates Suikoden 2. No one has any problem with this game being the king. This masterpiece. Where's the remaster, Konami? Probably being retranslated by certain companies. Unfortunately, where that happens, stick to the original. It's just excellent and it's the best JRPG in this list. The list is over, the ranking is over. Number 10, we got Beyond the Beyond. It's a bad game. It's not absolutely terrible, but it's bad nonetheless. Number 9, Final Fantasy 13. There's a lot of haters of the game out there, including me. Well, I don't hate it, but I definitely do not like it. Number 8, Dragon Star Varnir. It's still a decent compiled hard RPG and one of the better games by the company, but it's not top tier, to be honest. Number 7, Treasure of the Rudras, fan-translated Super Nintendo RPG. Great game, but again, it's just not top tier. Number 6, Lunar, the Silver Star Harmony. This is a full remake of the original versions. This is my preferred version to play, my favorite. But again, I'm not the biggest Lunar fan out there. Number 5, Final Fantasy Tactics. It needed to be in the top 5, but it's there, it's low. It's not in the first places because I'm honestly not the biggest fan of it, but I respect it a lot, so it needed to be on top on the 5 places. Number 4, Project Cross Zone. Amazing game, criminally underrated. One of the most underrated games of all time, man. Number 3, Tales of Exilia, masterpiece, but it can't compete against number 2, which is Persona 3. I just like it a bit more, and I think people like it a bit more too, even though they hate it. A lot of them hate it. Number 1, Suikoden 2. It just needed to be number 1. So that's the ranking, everybody. I hope you had a blast and enjoyed this video. Let me know what your ranking is in the chat right now if you want to, or in the comment section below. Thanks for watching, everybody, and that's it. First episode, everybody. Today we have 2 strategy JRPGs that are so unique, revolutionary, extremely influential. People hold these 2 in a really high standard nowadays. You know, they know that even if you're not a fan of these games, even if you didn't like them, you at least admit that they're extremely important in JRPG history. Tactics Ogre, any version, any freaking version, okay, versus Valkyria Chronicles. Again, any version. Okay, none of these games have ever been remade. These are just remasters. The versions that I'm holding right now are remasters. Okay, these are on PS4. But if you play the PS3 version of Valkyria, or the Steam version, or the original Super Famicom version of Tactics Ogre, or PSP or PS1, any version, okay, you would like to vote for, it counts. Shin's RPG says, Tactics Ogre for me, just because I'm a sucker for medieval JRPGs. I'm not quite a fan of anything military-based. In its gameplay, Tactics Ogre is quite similar with Final Fantasy Tactics. Of course, Final Fantasy Tactics was completely inspired by and influenced by Tactics Ogre, and they have the same developer, Yasumi Matsuno. Who Flung says Valkyria Chronicles wins. This was a game changer. It was everywhere. Even a collectible card game I played back in the day had a crossover and it was glorious. Okay, so Who Flung continues saying the perspective, the mechanics, the characters, they're better in Valkyria 1 than in Tactics Ogre? Kevin says Valkyria Chronicles is visually appealing because it was Sega's answer to writing a World War II story, but with real-time action strategy, and the art style being this cel-shaded sketch style looks amazing. Couldn't agree more. Brian says I have to go with Valkyria Chronicles as it was totally novel and unique for how it plays and remains fairly unique to this day. That's right, Tactics Ogre was also really unique for its time, keep that in mind, but a lot of games are like that, whereas Valkyria Chronicles, it's hard to find games that are like it nowadays. XCOM, maybe, that's the only one I can think of. Exactly, Valkyria has a very distinguishable and innovative battle system, says Jaime. Yum Yum says Valkyria Chronicles is like a turn-based Xenoblade. I love the visuals of the game. It's a third-view turn-based RPG, and the colors look like a watercolor painting. That's the cel-shading graphic style for you, which is beautiful. That's a good argument in favor of Valkyria Chronicles. Gary says Valkyria Chronicles. I love the battle system and characters and the comic book style cutscenes. That was also like, it wasn't innovative, it's been done before, you know, but yeah, I mean, there aren't many JRPGs out there told in a comic book style cut. I mean, I love that too, man. Kevin continues saying, Valkyria wins also because of the fact that Sega managed to mix real-time strategy with third-person shooter mechanics. That was freaking genius. It was. Melfi says, Tactics Ogre Reborn has a dude art style and has pretty challenging gameplay, and it has a good story and decent dialogue. What do you mean? Oh, good. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, what do you mean with a dude art style? Okay, good art style. Okay. I don't know, the first thing that came into my mind was the preenies from this guy. Lou says, going to go with Tactics Ogre here for the plot script alone, especially expertly written dialogue, beautiful character design, and such a profound strategy combat system, not for the faint of heart. That's true, it's a really challenging game. Valkyria Chronicles is a really challenging game too, but Tactics Ogre is 10 times more challenging. Smiling Dog says, for me, Tactics Ogre, it's one of my personal favorites despite of its excruciating difficulty. I fell in love with it due to its excellent OST by Hitoshi Sakimoto, and the story was definitely solid. Well, yeah, but keep in mind that both games have the same composer, Hitoshi Sakimoto. That's a good argument. Mystery Kid says, Tactics Ogre for me, the battle system is way better and more tactical and more complex. The story is deep and interesting. It also has multiple endings, so it has a replayability and more interesting characters. I agree with everything you say, but I don't think it's that complex. I think the Valkyria Chronicles battle system is a bit more complex because it's so unique. There's barely anything like it, but that's just my opinion. Athis says Valkyria Chronicles 1 was easy if you rushed the victory conditions. Tactics Ogre, there really was no easy way to cheese maps, so I prefer Tactics Ogre since it needed pardon for the pun, more tactics. So what you're trying to say is that Tactics Ogre was way more strategic and challenging than Valkyria Chronicles. Okay, gotcha. Okay, Donsk says both games are solid games on their own. For me, it stands more in the personal tastes. Actually, I agree with that. In my case, Valkyria Chronicles is better always in gameplay. In story, Tactics Ogre is a bit better. Overall, I like Valkyria more. Okay. No Face Y'all says, I like both games, but I only finished Tactics Ogre. It was challenging and the story was mature and very well written. I think Tactics Ogre is not that well known because of Final Fantasy Tactics. The poll is over. Valkyria Chronicles won with 66%. Tactics Ogre lost with 34%. Okay, I wasn't expecting that. Like I told you, I think Tactics Ogre will win, but I guess I was wrong. I'm so happy my pick won again. Valkyria Chronicles is such a masterpiece. You guys know I'm a super big diehard fan of the game. Watch my 10 things you didn't know about Valkyria Chronicles video, please. I'll leave it at the end. I think it's an amazing game. Tactics Ogre, you gotta consider the fact that while I still like the game, I still loved Reborn. I didn't become a fan of the game until recently, until maybe a year ago. And whereas Valkyria Chronicles has been with me for like 15 years, you know, I freaking love the game. I think it's a masterpiece, and I think it's a revolutionary RPG. It influenced a heck of a lot of JRPGs, but Tactics Ogre influenced Final Fantasy Tactics, and Final Fantasy Tactics influenced way more tactical RPGs out there. So, someone was saying that Valkyria Chronicles is the more modern game, and it shows. I mean, we can see the influence of Tactics Ogre in a lot more tactical RPGs out there, whereas Valkyria Chronicles, it's so unique and special that it is influential, but most developers don't dare to create similar gameplay mechanics or similar games inspired by Valkyria Chronicles, you know. It's such a unique game. It inspired XCOM. The XCOM Enemy Within or Enemy Unknown games, you know, were inspired by Valkyria Chronicles. But yeah, Tactics Ogre is just more influential. But still, Valkyria Chronicles while it's still very challenging, it's just more friendly, easier to get into. You don't have to deal with a lot of jobs and awkward job changes that you know. I mean, you gotta practice a lot when it comes to Tactics Ogre to really understand the depth of the job system and to understand what's good and what's not. And Valkyria Chronicles makes that a little bit easier. You don't have a job system, but you do have a class system. And you also need to figure out which classes are better against this or that type of enemy, or which class is better in these types of situation. And in my opinion, that adds, well, I can't say one has more strategic value than the other, okay? That's not what I'm trying to say. But I like that strategy approach, or the tactical approach of Valkyria Chronicles much more than the one in Tactics Ogre. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I like the battle mechanics and the gameplay mechanics way more in Valkyria Chronicles than in Tactics Ogre. It's just a matter of personal taste, and it's just more fun, more dynamic. While Tactics Ogre is nowadays, back then it was very influential. It was a game of its kind, unique. But nowadays, you know, it's been done to death. The formula has been done to death. So unless you play Tactics Ogre many years ago, Valkyria Chronicles is just more unique, and in my opinion, it's just more fun to play. There's more variety in gameplay mechanics, in characters, you know, there's just more development in there. And also that, you know, in terms of character development, we do see a lot of development in Tactics Ogre, but most of your party members, just like in Valkyria Chronicles actually, are generic characters that never say a word, you know, but there's just more character development, even for these generic characters in Valkyria Chronicles. What with the DLC, you know, what with some of the things they say, the personalities, skills they got, you know, there's more development, you know, they were better characterized in Valkyria Chronicles than in Tactics Ogre. That's what I'm trying to say. Graphics, well, the graphics in the original Tactics Ogre look great, but if we compare the Reborn version with the remastered version of Valkyria Chronicles, or any version of Valkyria Chronicles really, you can't, I mean, just the cel-shaded graphics is just freaking beautiful, and I'm such a fanboy of that style. I think it's one of my favorite artistic styles in video games, up there with HD 2D. You know, cel-shaded graphics, I'm a sucker for that, you know. The music is done by Hitoshi Sakimoto in both games, so it's equally good. To be honest, I don't have a preference here. I may pick Valkyria Chronicles just because I played it more times, and therefore, as a result, the themes are more memorable for me. But it's Hitoshi Sakimoto, it sounds the same, the themes are like similar, the music is kind of similar, you know, I can't pick a winner here. And finally, the story. I say the story for last because I think it's the only thing in which Tactics Ogre might be better than Valkyria Chronicles. In Valkyria Chronicles, we got this story that's more based on the World War II that happened in real life. It's also its own thing, self-contained story, and it does include some comedy and some fan service and blah blah blah, but again, you know, the main focus of the story is the characters and their development and the situations they go through and how they feel about the war. I guess it's a little bit more light-hearted than a Tactics Ogre one. The Tactics Ogre story is darker, more mature, and I'm a sucker for that, so I gotta give preference to it. But I think the story in Valkyria Chronicles is a bit more memorable because it grows on you, the characters grow easily on you, and I just didn't, maybe you did, but I didn't get that attached to most of the characters in Tactics Ogre. Even some of the main characters, I didn't get too attached to them, and I got attached to almost every character in Valkyria Chronicles. So the story is more mature, more political, you know, more complex, more deeper. You know, in Tactics Ogre, I'll give you that, but I still prefer the story in Valkyria Chronicles because it's almost just as deep, almost just as complex, almost just as mature and political, and it's just more appealing to me. There's just an element in the storytelling, in the narrative in Valkyria Chronicles that I like more. That's it. So, of course, Valkyria Chronicles 1 is the better game, in my opinion, of course. Sorry for everybody who voted for Tactics Ogre. It's a fantastic game, but it just isn't there quite yet. Valkyria Chronicles is still the better game. Yeah! My pick won again. Thanks for watching, everybody.